Are you giving up too early? Hi, my name is Samara Abu-Selby, and I'm the host of the show Super Awesome You on the Super Awesome Mix podcast network. You can find more of our content at Super Awesome Mix on Instagram. And of course, if you haven't already, be sure to follow or subscribe to the show. And if you know someone in your life that would also benefit from hearing these words, please be sure to pass it on and share the show with them. Finally, take a couple seconds and leave a 5-star review. It's greatly appreciated, and it helps others who pop onto the show page to know that there's good stuff here. So I really appreciate if you could do that for me and for others out there. This week's episode is the idea that often we kind of ignore invisible progress. So, what I mean by invisible progress is the sense that we are making progress, but there's nothing reporting back to us that something is happening. We as human beings really, really like immediate feedback. You could see this in everyday life. If you've ever gone up to an elevator and pressed the elevator button, you expect it to light up, right? Because if it doesn't light up, what's that signaling to you is that nothing is happening, the elevator didn't hear your command, so to speak, and it's not coming to get you. So we really rely on little cues like that to indicate yep, okay, cool, you press the button, I'm going to light up. I'm going to, your brain is going to say, cool, I've done something because look, the light is on. So clearly the elevator is on its way. We like this with everything that we do. We really, really like and desire immediate feedback for an action that we take. Our brains are wired to take inputs from the world and then immediately understand what is the consequence of that input, and then that's how we build a lot of our neural pathways. You can witness this if you have a child, or you can go hang out with a niece or nephew or your son or daughter, whoever the kid may be in your life, and you see them constantly exploring the world because it's all new to them. So if they touch something hot, that's going to immediately report back to their brain hey, this is hot, don't touch that. And then now they have learned, cool, things on the stove on that big box over there in the kitchen tend to be hot, so I'm going to avoid walking over there. As human beings, as we get older, we never really grow out of that desire for immediate feedback. And this really kind of flies in the face of long-term goals that we have. For example, I might today set a goal that I want to save $1,000, and I might want to do this over the course of several months or a year, whatever the case may be. Now, in this exact moment, all I've done is just set a goal of saying I'm going to save $1,000. But how do I really measure that I have saved that money? Well, I could open up, let's say, a new bank account, or if you have a bank that lets you kind of put money on the side, I could at least go and do that. And maybe I put in $50 just to get it rolling. But then what is the actual actions I need to take to save money? This one in particular is kind of like a passive one, because by saving money, I'm not spending money, but I'm also not doing anything to necessarily save it in that moment, if that makes sense. I'm not ooh, you know what? I was going to spend $20 on this smoothie, but I'm not. So, woohoo, I've saved $20. And then maybe at the end of the month, I get to move $20 more into my savings account. There's a really long gap between the goal that I have set and the actual action and payoff for that goal. Goals like savings tend to kind of go out the window because instead you spend, you're not paying attention to it. It's kind of back of your mind. Then you get your credit card bill and you're like, well, there goes savings for this month. I've spent it all on smoothies and, and cookies. In no way am I telling you what I spend my money on here, just an example. And then you're not able to move that money into your savings account. It's like a passive thing that you didn't really think about. One way you could kind of fix that is by actually moving $20 into your savings account that next moment you thought about getting a smoothie, and then you don't get the smoothie, and then your savings account grows by $20. That works really well. The problem is it's difficult to get a reward from moving $20 into your savings account, because in the alternate scenario, you get to have a delicious smoothie and your brain lights up like crazy because there's all these wonderful sugars and you're being fed, and food is highly, highly rewarding, versus I don't know, you can just go and refresh your bank account and notice that it's now $20 higher than it was before. So that is part of the problem of invisible progress. and us setting long-term goals that tend to kind of go on the wayside because we like immediate satisfaction. We want those reward factors right now. One way I found to deal with this problem and to, make progress against these long-term goals is actually to reward myself along the way. So, and to break them up into smaller steps. So, if I set that same goal, if I want to save $1,000 over the next several months, what I could do is that at the end of the week, if I've saved $50 that week, in those moments of like, oh, I'm not going to get a smoothie, or I'm not going to get a coffee today, I'm actually going to move those dollars in my bank account. If at the end of the week, my bank account is $100 higher, $50 higher, then I will go and reward myself with a cookie. So yes, I'm spending that little bit of money, but I'm spending a lot less than had I been doing that every single day. And I hit my savings goal, and then I'm taking a little bit away from it by, having like a built-in small reward like that along the way. So you are tightening that feedback loop of taking the action of saving, and you are rewarding yourself for having done that over that smaller time window. So that is a much more powerful kind of feedback loop in your brain than saying you want to save $1,000 over 4 months, because that window of time is far too long, and there's nothing along the way that's really going to be actively rewarding in order for you to do that. We've talked about this on the show before, of breaking large goals down into smaller things. So this is kind of a tweak on that, which is to reward yourself for making and hitting milestones along the way. The other thing I want to talk about that has actually really helped me think about long-term goals and the progress that I'm making on it is another example from science, which is whenever you, let's say, put a glass of water into a freezer, let's say the water started at, 75, 80 degrees is kind of room temperature, and then you put it into the freezer. As it is getting cooler and cooler, it still appears to be water to you, right? All the way from 75 degrees Fahrenheit down to 33 degrees Fahrenheit, it appears like nothing has changed about that glass of water. If you put your hand in it, you're going to notice that the water is cooler, but just by looking at it, it's still water. And it's not until that final degree hits, that now you're at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you start to go a little bit below it, that you notice a change. All of a sudden, it's turned into ice. But if you had just put it in, and then right at 33 degrees, you're like, well, it's been in here for hours and look, nothing has changed, I'm going to remove it, you never would have achieved that final step of it turning into ice. I think way too often I'm guilty of this with a lot of my goals. I think, well, I'm doing all this work and I'm not seeing any payoff, so I'm just going to stop doing it. But the problem is that the payoff was invisible. It was hard to measure. Things absolutely were happening in the background, but I kind of gave up too quickly and walked away from it. So what I do in those cases, again, is I ask myself other types of questions. For example, when I really wanted to lose weight, there were stretches of time where my weight was just not budging. And I knew the science in the back of my mind of like, sometimes you're going to hit a plateau and it's going to take a little while. And our bodies very much are programmed to not give up weight from an evolutionary standpoint. And so I instead had to ask myself, well, how am I feeling? Am I enjoying that I'm eating better? Do I have more energy? Am I sleeping better? Am I waking up easier? Am I just, feeling more refreshed throughout the day? The answer to all those questions were yes. And so even though the scale wasn't moving, I had to reinforce, kind of these like smaller milestones, these wins throughout that time period to convince myself that, yes, I am making progress. Trust in the process. Do not give up too early. And thankfully, I was able to lose a lot of weight over, 14 months because I never gave up on it. And I trusted in the little mini rewards that I was getting throughout that time period. So this week's song of the week is similar in this regard, and it is called Believer by Imagine Dragons. I love the tone of this song. It really is one of these kind of like, you just feel like a badass when you listen to it. You can walk with this, kind of a strut down the street listening to it, or you can go for a run. It's a great workout song. It has such a great bass line that hits. And Imagine Dragons tend to have a lot of really great motivational songs. So this will not be the last time that they appear on our ongoing mixtape. But the key thing here is like, you got to believe. You really have to believe that the work that you're doing is making progress, and you can create these little milestones and these little mini rewards along the way. And you can reframe what you're doing throughout that process to encourage yourself to keep going. So even if you aren't measuring the success in the way that you wish you could, you can measure it in other ways and just trust in that process.